Hi, my name is Frank Saunders, and I'm a teacher here at the Virginia Museum Studio School. I teach photography and collage, and I'm also educator for the museum's photo collection. And part of that job is giving talks about photography, and one of the talks I give is about photo collecting. And so I like to use some photographs that I've collected over the years today to give you some tips and hints to help you in your collecting, whether it's with photographs or other forms of art. The first photograph I'd like to share with you is a 19th century photograph of, it's an albumen print, and it's a botanical of the plant, the tea plant. Botanical shows you different elements of the plant. So there are the leaves, the seeds, the flowers, sometimes you see the roots. And this was a teaching tool. This photograph was mounted to card with a printed label on the back, which gave information about tea. Photographs are often anonymous in the 19th century. Photography was not seen as an art form at that time. It was a technical skill. And so authorship was not as important as it is now. This photograph actually came from an antique flea market, and I believe I paid about $8 for it. This photograph is a photogravure, which was a book illustration in The North American Indian by the photographer Edward Curtis. Edward Curtis was concerned with the plight of the Native Americans at the turn of the century and began a huge historic documentation process where he spent 20 years living with Indians during part of the year and then going back to his studio in Seattle and working to produce a historic record of every American Indian tribe. This was published as both a book and portfolio. Each one, you would get a book and portfolio each year. There were 20 volumes, and this is one of the small illustrations that was in one of the books. Each book was illustrated with photographs and came with the text that told about the different tribes that were described in the book. And this particular photograph illustrates a myth from a Plains Indian tribe. It's called the Mythic Stone. And I was very, very attracted to it when I first saw it in a bookstore in New Mexico because it's a rather mysterious image. It doesn't make a lot of sense out of context. When you read the myth that goes along with it, it makes perfect sense. And that's one of the things that's so intriguing about Curtis's photographs is because taken out of context, they can seem very, very contemporary. I was haunted by this photograph. I returned back from my trip to New Mexico with this picture in my memory without buying it. And when I contacted the gallery 2 weeks later, the photograph had been sold. So it took me about 2 or 3 years to track another print down. So I guess my lesson from this photograph is when you find something and it haunts you, act fast because it might not be there the next time you're looking for it. This photograph is by Weston, a very well-known photographer. He was one of the sons of probably one of the greatest American photographers of the 20th century, Edward Weston, and went on to have a very long and varied career himself. This photograph illustrates one of my favorite collecting principles, which is, it comes from a book called Cadillac Jack. The antique dealer, who is the main character in the book, has a collecting philosophy, and that is anything can be anywhere. And this photograph came to me through a friendship. I was spending time in Highland County, Virginia, which is one of the least populated counties east of the Mississippi. I became friends with a couple there who had a gallery, and one day the woman said, "Would you like to see some Weston photographs?" And I said, "Of course." And she pulled out a portfolio and she had over 30 photographs by Weston. And it turned out her father had actually gone on the trip with Brett when these photographs were made in Glen Canyon, part of the Grand Canyon complex in Arizona. And so her Brett actually gave her father the photographs, and he passed them on to her. And at a certain point, she and her husband wanted to sell this collection of photographs and asked me to look through them and give them talking points, which I did. I made notes. And a month or so later, they contacted me and told me they had sold 30 of them through a gallery in Arizona to a collector on the West Coast for $32,000. And she had 2 of the photographs left, 2 that had been dry mounted by a friend when she was in college, and she offered me one of them. So that's how I got this photograph. And it very well illustrates anything can be anywhere, a very important point for a collector to remember. A really important point to remember when collecting is that you don't have to necessarily go very far afield to find good quality work. Here in Richmond, we have a wonderful arts community, and this particular photograph is by a local artist, Pam Fox, who teaches here at the Studio School and teaches at Hampton-Sydney College. She has had a wonderful career and is a prolific artist. And buying art locally is a wonderful way to support the arts community and also get quality work at very affordable prices. This particular photograph is a platinum print. It was made from a negative made with type 55 Polaroid positive negative film. And it is part of a series that she made on using scientific equipment she discovered in Hampton-Sydney's attic. She made these still lifes using the old antique teaching apparatus from the school. And we traded. I actually gave her the egg that she used in the photograph, and she gave me a print. That's another point to make. Trading is also a wonderful way to collect. You don't necessarily have to put up cash money in order to get something if you have something of value to trade. And while a lot of people, artists, trade back and forth with each other all the time, you have to remember that artists are like any other person. If you have a professional skill, say you're a lawyer, a doctor, an accountant, artists need all these skills. So you can always trade with artists your skills for artwork. And that's another way to add to your collection. We all have our artistic heroes, and any photo collector would be very, very happy to have an Ansel Adams in his collection. Unfortunately, my pockets aren't that deep, but there are solutions to this problem if you are willing to spend a little time searching around. This particular photograph is by an artist named Jeff Nixon. Jeff Nixon is part of a group of photographers on the West Coast in Carmel who are essentially part of the Ansel Adams School of Photography. Jeff Nixon, actually was one of Ansel Adams' assistants, and there's a whole group of Ansel Adams assistants who have gone on to have very, very successful careers of their own. Now, Jeff has kind of absorbed the Ansel Adams point of view to the point that sometimes it's very hard to tell a Jeff Nixon photograph from an Ansel Adams photograph. So, if you're looking for an affordable Ansel Adams, check out his assistant's photographs. Jeff Nixon is a perfect example. For several $100s, you can get a photograph of comparable quality to an Ansel Adams with an actual Ansel Adams influence definitely tied in. So I hope these tips have given you some ideas that will enhance your collecting. I really firmly believe that living with original artwork is life enhancing. It makes you a happier and better person. And I hope that this encourages you to go out and find some treasures of your own to take home. Thank you.